others. And I have to tell you, those are the happiest moments and the happiest memories we each individually have with our families. Looking at these beautiful ski slopes behind, I have a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. Nothing is better for me than the chance of skiing with them together, whether it's here in Switzerland or in a country like Azerbaijan, who is now a shining star for tourism and for ski. Or visiting Mongolia, a country who has brought so much to the history of mankind, who has influenced the life of so many countries, of so many people, understand the origins of the brave warriors, of the mighty powers. Or Angola, who was unfortunately closed for tourism for way too long because of the difficulties, the civil war. And with peace under this government, Angola has opened a new door for visitors, has liberalized visas, has facilitated the access to the country, and has so much to offer, whether from safaris to beach destinations. It's not just oil and diamonds, which one has to say is not a bad combination. When you have to start a country, having oil and diamonds is not a bad start. But there is so much, and of course, and most important, beyond the natural wonders, beyond the landscapes, it's the people. It's the chance of spending time, of dancing in the streets of Luanda. It's visiting the Mongolian and spending a night together outside in a hut and having that experience of sharing together. Those are the experiences that mark our life. Those are the memories that we will have forever. So more than knowing whether Trump is going to announce that he will invade Greenland or not, let us keep the memories of this meeting as the most important memories of our stay here in Davos, the happy ones. Disconnect a little bit from all the craziness that we are going to have to witness in the days and hours to unfold, and think about the best moments of our lives. We all love our work, but we all love our holidays. So let's think about those holidays. Let me also say that we are very proud to have here with us a good friend who has put together all of this, Bolut, your determination, your dedication to tourism and to putting together a number of people who have shaped the industry, touches us, and we are very proud to have you here with us. I don't want to take any longer. We have much more interesting people to hear who have real stories to connect, and the new rising star of the world's tourism. I also have our own star of Euronews, our own Maria Tadeu, who will join here on stage. Maria is our chief EU news, so she will be talking about Greenland for most of the rest of the summit. But today she gets not to speak about Greenland, she gets to speak about very interesting tourism things. So Maria, over to you. Thank you very much. Señorita, por favor.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm Spanish, so obviously tourism is something that we care a lot deeply and that we are actually very good at. I know we're not on this panel, but I thought I should say it. So, of course, as you mentioned, Pedro, it's a very difficult Davos. Everyone understands that. There may be a trade war looming in 2 weeks, but tourism is still an area that creates positive emotions, and that's obviously a great asset to have. So to start with, we are going to begin with a keynote. It's a pleasure for us to have the Prime Minister of Mongolia, His Excellency Chandrasekhar. Please join us on stage for a keynote to begin with.
So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it is my pleasure to address you today on diplomacy of the tourism, a subject that sits at the crossroads of economic growth, international cooperation, and long-term stability or sustainability. 1 year ago, Mongolia made symbolic yet meaningful step on the global stage at the World Economic Forum last year in Davos. We established Mongolia House on Promenade, not simply as a pavilion, but as a statement of intent, a statement that Mongolia is open, ready, engaged, ready to take part in shaping global dialogue and global capital flows. So the World Economic Forum represents a sense of public and private partnership, a platform where it brings together business leaders, investors, politicians and governments, innovators and scientists to build trust, resilience, and shared progress. That's why Mongolia places great values on this platform and participates actively, because we believe dialogue must lead to action and partnerships must lead to tangible outcomes or results. Ladies and gentlemen, through gradual yet determined policies, which we called Movement Against Entropy, Mongolia's economy has rebounded strongly. Economic growth of Mongolia accelerated from 2.4% to 6.4% last year, accompanied by the international confidence. After more than a decade, Mongolia's sovereign credit rating was upgraded, reflecting economic recovery, and all three agencies, Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's, upgraded Mongolia's credit rating. And Mongolia's sovereign wealth fund increased by 15%. Inflation rate is stabilized, and according to the World Bank and IMF, Mongolia's economic growth will be maintained around 5 to 6%. So yet growth alone is not enough. Mongolia is considered one of the 10 richest countries in terms of variety and volume of mineral resources. We have almost everything of them in the Lewis periodic system. Now copper price is increasing, but we are rich by rare earth, gold, and almost everything. But our economy is very much dependent on mining, so that is why we are aiming to diversify our economy. That's why tourism is viewed as second sector of Mongolia. It is a strategic pillar of our economic diplomacy and long-term drive to inclusive economic growth. Mongolia is a country of rare scale of authenticity, vast untouched land, rich history, legacy of Genghis Khan. Mongolia's age-old history and customs is very unique in the world, I think. So Mongolia is 17th largest country in terms of land in the world, but very young country in terms of population. Almost 65% of the population is under 35 years old. So Mongolia is least populated country in the world, with 4 times bigger land than France, but only 3.5 million population. So this vast untouched landscapes and living nomadic culture, silence, space, stars, sky, resource, and that are increasingly scarce in today's world. This is not a mass tourism, but experiential and exclusive tourism, offering Mongolia at once in a lifetime experience available throughout the year. From cultural heritage and nomadic life to adventure, sports, business events, historical tourism rooted in the legacy of Genghis Khan, Mongolia offers value proposition that cannot be replicated anywhere elsewhere in the world. Visitors come not merely to observe, but to connect with nature, culture, and meaning. The results are already visible. As Mr. Pedro correctly mentioned, Mongolia is rising star of tourism. Number of tourists, international tourists, increasing by 10%, 10 to 15% every year. International tourist arrivals have surpassed pre-pandemic levels, and growth of more than 50% compared to 2020, so within 5 years. So also international tourists, mainly in Asia-Pacific region, from Asia-Pacific region, consider Mongolia as energetic Mongolia. Many people come to be re-energized in Mongolia, looking at the stars, blue sky, and Altai Mountain, Gobi Desert. So you can observe in Mongolia every landscape, different biodiversity, different landscape. Like we have similar landscapes like Switzerland, but also we have similar landscapes, deserts like Sahara and other. So you can see every differences of the world in Mongolia. So the growth is a result of deliberate policy choices, including visa facilitation, air transport liberalization, digital outreach, and cross-border tourism cooperation. It also reflects the success of our national branding initiative, Go Mongolia, as well as the declaration of 2025 to 2030 Visit Mongolia years. So I think we are very different from Mongolia. Different nature, different people, different language. But we have one similarity. Both of our names include phrase, word, go. So go Mongolia. Come to Mongolia. So it's our slogan. We launched this national branding initiative, Go Mongolia. Energetic Mongolia, come to Mongolia, go to Mongolia to be re-energized. And we invite you all to participate 820th anniversary of the Genghis Khan's Great Empire this year, 11th of July. Also, we invite you all to participate Mongolia's Economic Forum, which will be held in 29th to 30th of June. Day before the event, we will organize also a nomadic culture event. So we would like to cooperate our friends, brothers from Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. We are all nomads. We have similar cultures, so we would like to introduce new tourism product like Transaltai tourism. We have many similarities, but not likewise Mongolia. We are nomads, and so we can combine our tourism development. I think we believe that we have strong potential of cooperation. We need to exploit our resources together. So, and at the end, I would like to invite you all. So come to Mongolia. This is Oasis, or island of democracy in our region. Come to a land where tourism serves as diplomacy and investment builds lasting legacy. Thank you for your attention. Go Mongolia!
So thank you very much. Of course, Prime Minister is very busy, and I've been told 5 minutes, so I make a very good note of that, maybe 7. Prime Minister, of course, you said a lot of interesting things, but it's Davos, so we need to do business and politics, of course, for business. Of course, the audience is full of people who are very interested in your country, who may want to invest in your country, but specifically, what can you provide? Do you talk about visa facilitations? Is there permitting, licenses, things that are quick that can be done? What is the business pitch that you make? Because tourism is a great asset, but it's also very competitive. So what makes you different?
So now, one of the top priorities of global economic development is energy independence. So in terms of Mongolia is rich by energy resources, solar, coal, coke and coal, everything. We have rich mineral resources. But other hand, there is a unique characteristic or unique direction of tourism, which means, as I mentioned before, as Pedro mentioned, people come to Mongolia to be re-energized. Many Turkish people, if I'm not mistaken, I can name some politicians, before the election they come to Mongolia to be re-energized. Many Japanese or Korean tourists come to Mongolia to see the blue sky and stars. So it's, that is why they call Mongolia energetic Mongolia.
And Prime Minister,
It's our comparative advantage, other hand.
and if you're an investor, will they find a government that is going to work with them, that is willing to give clear legislation, clear horizons, jurisdiction? What package can they expect?
So as I mentioned before, we are introducing movement against entropy, which we are creating more stable, sustainable, consistent legal and business environment for investors. So it will create more pleasant business environment for legislations for businesses, not only foreign direct investment, but also domestic investors. So we call it law of economic freedom. We already submitted to the parliament a package of law named after law of the economic freedom, where we will enhance freedom to investors, property right, investment right, everything. So it's our legislative framework.
And Prime Minister, just a final question, because you have meetings to go. In this Davos, it's clear that the world is changing very fast, and that means there's going to be new alliances, perhaps even new frictions, but relations around the world are changing very fast. What role do you believe tourism can offer when it comes to diplomacy? Is this also a way in which you connect with potential allies? And which countries, I wonder, are you interested in?
Yes, as you mentioned correctly, global order is changing, but I can't judge current situation, what will happen tomorrow. It's very unpredictable and uncertain. But I can guarantee Mongolia is a very peaceful country. Mongolia's foreign policy is peace-oriented and free, and also our country is protected by two largest armies, so it's a very peaceful country in the world.
Well, Prime Minister Chandrashekar, thank you so much for joining us and for your time. We appreciate it. Very good. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I know. I just.
Connect with someone who does, because
Well, I mean, it's.
Adams, can you? We are waiting for one of our guests, but he's caught up in. He's here. He's caught up in a meeting, so we'll wait for perhaps 1 minute and we can start. In the meantime, of course, I have to introduce Marcio de Jesus Lopez Daniel. He's the Minister of Tourism of the Republic of Angola. We're also joined by Professora Alessandra Priantes. She is the President of the Italian Tourism Board. And Setel Gopinal, he is the CEO of the International Congress and Convention Association, and of course, representative for a Sear Investment Company of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will join us very soon. But let's start perhaps already, as you know, it's a busy agenda, and I know you have to go, especially you. So the first question is, and we just debated this already, the zeitgeist around the tourism. One of the things that makes your industry different is that there's still a positive story to tell to the world. How do you see the perspectives in 2026? Because it is a positive story, it is a positive industry, but it does not live in a silo. Obviously, the global context can have an impact. So how do you see the two coming together?
Thank you for your question. I would like starting greeting my colleagues of panels and of course the organizers that has invited us. It's a great honor and a privilege to sit here. I would like to greet the Minister of Planning of Angola, the Ambassador, the dear guest is here. So jumping directly to your question, I will speak on a perspective of African country that, of course, feels the impact of all the situation going on in the world. And Africa has the most grown population in the world and the youngest one. So the main challenging that African countries face now is the challenging of the unemployment. So we are now focused on those kind of industries that are intensive in human resources, that can fight the unemployment that we see in our societies. So we need stability. We need the industries of peace. Tourism is one of them. Absolutely. That's why Africa is playing a role that join forces to other nations to use the most peaceful ways to solve all the differences that may have in the global competition and so on. Because we cannot afford of having a lot of instabilities in our countries. I would like, of course, to emphasize the role of the president, the pro tempore president of African Union, which is the president of the Republic of Angola, that have been making a lot of efforts in order to solve internally and the problems that Africa might have. And we believe that also most of the stability in the Western countries and the countries that usually are used to receive immigrants and especially from Africa, go through have strong public-private partnerships with African countries through structured financing to create in Africa the industries that usually makes Africans traveling from Africa to other countries. Besides of extracting natural resources and taking them to the Western and most industrialized countries, it's more effective to have those kind of corporations that puts in Africa the industries that will create employment in Africa. So actually they are defending themselves for future immigrants, because and as African countries we are strongly committed on taking advantage of this demographic advantage, because having the youngest population in the world, it's also challenging for us for shifting our economies, for being those that are dependent on the extractive sector, like oil, diamonds, to go to the services economy with the creative industries, cultural, tourism, and there we can compete with the other countries. That's what I think. Thank you.
Minister, it's very interesting what you say because, of course, Euronews, we have a very big presence in Brussels. And one of the things that we hear now is European leaders who say the relationship with Africa has to change. It's no longer we go there, our companies go there and don't create value. Now there needs to be real partnerships. And that means also bringing along European companies. So just very briefly, what's your pitch to European companies who want to take that on their word, who say, you know what, we want to bet on Africa. Our governments are telling us we need to work with them. What do you offer them?
Yeah, and thank you for your question. I believe that this is the correct way of seeing the cooperation, but as African, we believe that the challenging is mostly in our side, because we have to create the proper business environment for the investors coming from other continents with the ambition of this vision. And I believe that a foreign direct investments succeed not only when you have good business environment with the good opportunities, but when the companies goes there, starting a business with zero bureaucracy as well, as we have done in Angola. We have declared a war to bureaucracy in tourism. Yeah, it's a war declaration, so that's why we have received the award of best destination for investment in tourism last year with the Global Tourism Forum. Yeah, but I was saying, you succeed in attracting foreign direct investment when they go there. They start a business, they profit, and when they profit, they decide not to repatriate the money, but to reinvest in the country. When you achieve that, that means that you have achieved the highest level of having a good business environment. That's what we are looking for. We are trying to have the best business environment in the world, so people can choose our countries to do business and take advantage of being in a country with the youngest population in the world.
Well, Minister, thank you very much for
thank
that.
you.
It's a great way to start our panel. And now, of course, to Alessandra Piante. Obviously, I say this very respectfully, but on paper, it looks like you have an easy job, because to sell Italy as a tourist destination, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of effort. You'd think on paper, right? I'm sure the reality is very different. But I wonder, actually, to me, that's very interesting. From one of the top tier destinations in the world, known by everyone across the world, how do you see this 2026 playing out? Where do you see opportunities? But also, as we mentioned before, no industry, even a very positive one, a very experienced, humane one, lives in a silo, and there's a very difficult global context. So where do you see challenges that can be addressed through partnerships?
Well, thank you very much, Maria. I do feel basically, I'm very honored, clearly, to be in this panel, but I do feel that I'm a little bit the opposite of what Minister was just mentioning, the youngest continent in the moment. It's like I sort of represent a little bit the opposite, but with experience comes a legacy, comes a gravity that we need to bring forward. So yes, I do have probably a very easy job on paper, but in reality, first of all, we are an example. So we have to bear the fact that, whatever happens in our country, in Venice, in Milan, in Rome, whether it's a solution for the so-called over-tourism, or whether it's an initiative, or whether something happens. If it happens in Italy, it normally has a global echo. So we have to be very responsible about the kind of example that we're setting. But also, it's also, what's intriguing for me, clearly, is we can actually experiment, start things. So in the setting the example, there's a lot of positivity as well. I am a firm believer that not only, tourism is the most positive industry in the world, but it's also the most human. And Minister mentioned it correctly. I mean, if we want to generate jobs for the younger generations and we want to keep it human, definitely tourism is an absolute resource. There's nothing like it. Absolutely. There's no AI that's going to get in the middle, no chatbot that is going to substitute the human experience, the person-to-person exchange, building long-lasting memories. Challenges that I see, well, I actually saw them a few years ago already, which is how to make tourism. At the time, you remember, we started mentioning quite a few years ago, sustainability, right? We started explaining it was tripartite, economic, social, environmental, and then things started getting a little bit messy. When it comes to investment, telling investors, look, you have to be sustainable, which means you need to give up a chunk of your money for an immediate return on investment now because you're going to see return on investment in 10 years. Well, that was okay-ish. We had a chance at pandemic, explain to people, look what happened. Tourism went from 100 to 0 and now basically back to almost 100. Does that mean people have learned the lesson of sustainability? Actually, not quite. It's a little bit the opposite. But the only, I think, very personal position, sustainability element that went forward was the social one. Social meaning including communities. There's no tourism development without an active involvement, an active inclusion of everybody in the destination, in the country, which means that when you actively involve community, you can also very successfully develop and promote lesser known destinations. And this, to me, Maria, is the key to the future. How do we actually bring tourism out of the sort of point of attractions, the things that everybody knows? People are always going to come to Rome. People are always going to come to Venice. How do I actually get them to go a bit further out? What story do I tell them? How do I make sure that the population in that particular destination is actively engaged in whatever strategy I'm putting forward? Because that's the only way to make it long-lasting, successful, and clearly generating jobs for the future.
You know, I love what you said because you mentioned with a brand that is very well known and a legacy of a country, what it evokes. It's a big responsibility. But one of the things we hear in Davos, and we've been hearing now for 3 years, is the idea that Europe has become a museum, that Europe is now a relic of the past, that the only thing that Europeans can offer now to the world is this idea of the museum and the vacation destination because there's a lack of innovation. But you also said we need to look to the future. So I wonder, how do you push back on this narrative that we're just now a sort of relic of the past? Because we Europeans hate hearing that.
Well, I mean, I feel a lot of pride when I say that, maybe because I'm an analogic person. I love vinyls, I kind of love that. But in reality, we're not a relic at all. I think the only difference that we have is that we have received all of this. We didn't build it. We're not the UAE. We're not, we didn't build things out of scratch. We have a heritage and we need to preserve. And that adds on complexity to the table because we are not just responsible for the people, we also have to be responsible for what we were given. But guess what? The relic gives immense possibilities of narrative. And at the moment, narrative, so what we do in destinations is much more important than destinations. Because, Maria, people don't travel because anymore, and I'm talking millennials, Gen Z, they don't travel anymore because of where they want to go. They travel because of what they want to do. So how do we actually fit into that? So how do we actually tell people, for example, to come to a certain destination in Italy, in Angola, in India, or even in Dubai, because they have to do something, not because they have to visit the place. So how do we get out of the relic narrative, but add in the little je ne sais quoi to it?
And some say, the good thing is that it's a relic, but you can't fake a Colosseum. There's intrinsic value in it.
Well, I have a joke on that. I really need to share it. No, you don't remember. You were probably just coming out of school. But when the first Gladiator came out.
I remember that one, but there's a 2 now.
I remember sitting down in a pizzeria in Trastevere, a very popular quarter of Roma, in front of my boyfriend that became husband. So that's a good thing. And there was an American couple next to me, and I swear they were making the following comment. She was like, oh, this is really beautiful, but it's not really well maintained enough respect to what they did in the movie. And you're like, I was scratching the top of my head, and my husband was looking at me saying, don't say anything. Don't comment, don't comment. So that tells a lot, as you said. But, we have a lot of things to do as well. I mean, who knew that Rome, or the suburbs of Rome, could become a #1 Congress destination in the world? Right, Santil?
Which is a perfect segue now to Dr. Gopinath. Of course, when you look at the Congress centers and the convention centers, a lot of people look at that as a sort of temperature check on how the travel sector is doing more broadly as to the kind of impact that it can have on accommodations and the entire world around the universe around conventions. I wonder for 2026, what kind of horizon do you look at? What are you expecting? And again, this question that we mentioned before, you don't live in your own bubble. There's a broader context, which is challenging. So is that going to have any impact? And if so, how do you mitigate?
Thank you, Maria. And first of all, to Pedro, Maria, and Euronews and Bulut, the mountains of Davos screaming about tourism. This is very unique to all of us, because across the world we advocate, be it my organization, ICA, or all the policymakers around the world, when we meet, it's what we talk about, to talk about what we do. To your question, Maria, to segue to all Honorable Minister and my dear friend Alexander said, the meetings industry is all about bringing people together. That's what today we are doing, over 3,000 people in this beautiful location coming and talking about bringing dialogue, the spirit of dialogue together to talk about the future. To answer your question, from innovation, from intellectual capital development to growth of destinations, what Angola is talking about, building new convention center, building a new bureau, the wonderful statement by Honorable Prime Minister of Mongolia. I'm very optimistic. The meeting industry brings overall the knowledge, thought-provoking, the innovation, and also the future generation together. And we see that from 25 to 26, the growth is about 64%. So there are challenges around the world, geopolitical challenges we all face across, a lot of uncertainty. But given the fact of all that, the innovation, the technological development taking place, just to give an example, we all use the buzzword AI in the last 24 months or so actively. There are 864 new meetings have been launched in the last 24 months only on the topic of AI. Now, when you start a meeting of that nature, it brings over 1,000 plus people. It brings economics together. It brings knowledge together. It brings academia together. It also brings innovation and creativity together. So there is huge opportunity across the world. I mean, we as ICA used to operate in about 70 plus countries 5 years ago. Now we have gone to 108 countries. So you can see the potential. Everybody wants to invest. Why? Because the business, the investment, you talk about any topic, medical science, healthcare, you need an audience coming together. So it's not about the organization where I represent. It's all about the creativity, the innovation, and also the intellectual capital constantly being built through it. And that's what's happening even today in Davos, if you see.
Of course. And I know you're very busy, so you have to go into your next meetings, but I don't want to end this panel without, of course, looking at the business angle of this specifically. And I think, sometimes in Europe, people feel uncomfortable talking about money and business. It seems too brash, but unfortunately, this is Davos, so we can do it, and it's still polite. So a question perhaps for the three of you now is, the title of this session is called Private and Public Partnerships, How to Make This Successfully. I want to start perhaps with you, Minister. What does it look like, or what is a good partnership for you, but specifically, concretely? Do you measure that by licenses for new hotels, by the number of new people that arrive, by visa facilitations, by jobs that are created? What does a good partnership look like to you, and how do you put it to fruition or take it to fruition this year, actively?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So the state has to play its role. We as state are willing to invest because we have an amazing country. I will say it's hard to find countries like with diversity of tourist products like Angola has. We have a tropical forest in the north and we have desert in the south, so it's a very diversified. So the state will make its part, investing to create like the infrastructure, roads, telecommunication, power, electricity, sanitation in the areas. Then we'll invite the private sector to do the hospitality industry, hotels, restaurants, aqua parks, and so on. And because we have a very diversified country and a very diversified product, we have to establish priorities, which we have done. And we have picked a couple of sites that are willing to be developed. And as a very unknown destination and an explored destination, we have to make ourselves known. That's why we are now the host country of the biggest consumer fairs in German market, which is the Stuttgart CMT. We are promoting our new tourist brand, Visit Angola. And in next month, in March, we will be the host country of ITB, the largest fair for tourism in Angola. And in May, we will be hosting a big investment forum for tourism in Angola, because as my colleague has mentioned, we are making our effort for MICE tourism, the tourism of events, because we have the infrastructure. And the infrastructures in Angola, they are not just serving the country, it's serving the continent. Huge international airport, one of the biggest in Southern Africa. We have one of the biggest conference center that we will be opening shortly. And we have the most strategic project, I will say, in the continent, which is the Lubito Corridor.
Yes.
The train rails that interconnect the Atlantic coast to West Coast, that will reduce the transport of minerals that now 48 days to 3 days. So Angola is not just playing a role as a country, but is a force of traction in the continent. And I believe with this strategic project, all the attentions of the investment we will come to our country.
Well, thank you very much. And I believe the EU is invested in this corridor.
EU
It's put
is
out
investing,
infrastructure money this year.
and United States is also investing. But we receive a lot of investors. We have, of course, another country like UAE, China, Turkey. We are destination,
Consortium.
a democratic destination. We receive everyone there.
Well, thank you very much for that, Minister. Alessandra Priante, same question to you. And, when it comes to private-public, I insist on the public too, because right now, not to get too much into the politics, but Italy does have a dedicated minister for Made in Italy, and this government said that it was going to make promoting Italy a core pillar of its policy. So I wonder, how do you see a good private-public enterprise working, and what does that mean in specific terms, beyond a headline?
Right. So let's be grounded. Let's talk KPIs as well. PPP for us is the absolute reason why we are so successful in the last few years, because people started to work better together. Having a central ministry that does a lot and gets involved but doesn't clearly overlap with the independence of the regions helps. But I think that the great ingredient was to have a prime minister that is so internationally recognized and firmly believes in tourism as an industry, not just to promote the country, but to attract investment. I would just like to quote a figure. We had the pleasure of hosting the WTTC Global Summit. WTTC, for those of you who don't know, is the World Travel and Tourism Council, is the biggest, basically, private sector organization related to travel and tourism. We hosted the Global Summit in Rome, all right? And immediately after that, our prime minister came to open it. Big sign of attention. And immediately after that, we had an 8.5 billion euros set of deals being signed by various countries. People are coming to invest in Italy because they feel safe. Because the fact that there's a stable government, let's be very honest, is like, normally it used to be in Italy that you talk to one minister and then the following year there's a new minister, and then there's a reshuffle in the governmental sort of attributions of. So to have such a stability, to have such a credibility, to be so grounded really helps everyone. But not only that, I think public-private partnership works, especially, as Minister was mentioning, when, for example, in our case, complex situation, we have a national situation, regions, province, municipalities, when everyone vertically in the public sector get involved, and when the private sector accompanies. So there's no internal competition, there's the belief and the understanding that tourism is a force for good. And I think the loss of COVID, everyone losing jobs, businesses, sort of woke everybody up to say, okay, tourism is a key element to actually restart. So ending up with KPIs, I think the public-private partnership KPI is a great element. The GDP generation, great element. Occupation generation is a great element. I think we absolutely have to get out of the number of visitors type of KPI. That doesn't really say anything about the success of a destination and of a policy. I think we need to bring in more economic and long-lasting social factors to the table to actually say, hey, we're actually doing a good job, or no, let's fix this. And by the way, I want to get invited to the investment forum, please.
Ah, well, there you go. That's fireworks.
Consider it done.
Well, thank you very much. This is why forums like this obviously work. And Dr. Gopinath, the same question to you. Obviously, when we talk about the private and public partnerships, we hear it a lot. Sometimes it's difficult to nail what that actually means in terms of policy. So specifically for you, what does that mean in terms of actionable measures that can get taken both ways, not just public to private?
No, absolutely, Maria. I think it's like said earlier as well. Our tourism industry, if you really look at it's a private sector's engine of growth, because the policymakers are there to make the policy, like you rightly said, from visas, so airlines sort of intervention, infrastructure locally being built, so that's the policymakers' main role. Private sector is the implementer in this case, and we see that more and more across the world. Tourism investments are made by different investors who are not really being focusing on tourism sectors. You take financial institutions, you take banks, you take multiple multinational organizations, which are never looking at how to integrate themselves into the tourism sector, whether it's meetings industry or leisure sector. So more and more, we see the private sector is becoming an integral part of tourism sector. But the most important thing is the challenge is what I see in many continents across the world when we do, the understanding and the stability. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunately lacking. I must say that we're glad to have some of the policymakers here who's really in the front seat and driving and say, I'm ready to promote, I'm ready to build a democracy, I'm ready to promote. But many parts of the world, still governments are trying to run the business. That's something needs to change across the world. That's we continuously advocate. No, it's a role of the private sector. You bring the more economically, make a friendly environment and hand it over. So the PPP model, it's one of the oldest model in this, in the world, but it's been really misunderstood in the last 2 decades. Where many governments have taken over and to say, no, I need to run, this is part of my business. If that changes, I'm sure we'll have a better world around us.
So less intervention. Well, thank you very much to the three. It was a fascinating conversation. Very happy to have been with you this morning. And of course, a round of applause. And we will continue with the forum very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Ah, very good. Well, you know, you're connected. Very good. The kingdom. Almost done. Almost done. She must absolutely go at 12:30. Oh, no, no. Thank you. No problem. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, thank you very much. We now continue with our session, so if you can take your seat. And I will take the occasion as we continue this forum from the Euronews travel team that we now have a dedicated travel channel. Of course, many of you are interested in the sector, as we just noted. So it's a good way to start. And Prime Minister, thank you very much. We're very honored to have you here with us. Before we open the conversation, I would just like to ask you, first of all, the title of this session is Tourism and Connecting People and Countries, Still a Way for Diplomacy. But I wonder, is that a tad naive, or is it still possible to connect people, prevent perhaps conflict through the shared experience of tourism?
Oh, I think it's entirely possible. We've experienced that in Sri Lanka for ourselves, that the people-to-people connections that tourism enables is one of the main factors that has enriched our relationships and strengthened diplomacy throughout with the countries that we engage with. And I think this was best experienced post cyclone Ditwa, which hit us in November, just prior to the height of our tourist season. December is our peak month. But during that time, we made an appeal to the international community. We spoke to our diplomatic corps, and we said, please don't cancel on us. Please keep to your plans and come to Sri Lanka. And people did. People responded, and we were able to record the highest number of arrivals in our history in December, a few days, weeks after the cyclone. And I think that sent out such a strong message of solidarity, a strong sense of optimism that we were recovering, and the resilience of our people. So again, all of those factors are extremely important and part of our diplomatic engagement. So we are a prime example of how that works.
Working. And of course, you said if tourists had none showed up, that would have made the situation much worse, of course, because there's entire lives and industries that depend on it in your country too. But I wonder, that is for the solidarity of people and the tourists, and of course, the experience that they built around countries. We know that maybe someone who's visited once, but that emotion in being in Sri Lanka led to something that stuck and resonated with them, they're likely to go back. So it's a lot very much about the experience on the ground. But I wonder, since this is Davos and just perhaps a more of a political question, when you hear the optimism in this room, still saying industry is a positive story that still tells a story of connection, but you walk down there and you hear the world is heading into a path of conflict, potentially more tariffs. There's a war, I count at least 3 active, more or less. Is that compatible?
Well, that's the way of the world. That is the reality that we have to deal with. And I think we still need to look for stories of hope, stories of recovery, stories of resilience. And you find that throughout the world. And I would like to think Sri Lanka is one of those stories. So instead of always, focusing on where the conflict is, I think we can also focus on where there are, moments of recovery, moments of hope, moments of real resilience shown by people and communities, and invest in those stories and invest in those parts of the world as well. So maybe shift the narrative, right? And I think we are offering an experience that can shift that narrative. And I think shifting that narrative is also important because that is also part of the story of the world.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister. And now also joining us on the panel, we have Kuban Omiraliyev. He is the Secretary General of the Organization of the Turkic States. Sir, a similar question to you. The world is in a great moment of change, and we see that partnerships, I'm not going to name names, but partnerships that seemed very solid, alliances that seemed they would be there forever, are now really changing, and new ones are opening. How do you see this conversation about new ways of creating diplomacy? There's tourism, but there's obviously energy was previously mentioned by the Prime Minister at the start of the session of Mongolia. How do you see this new scenario playing out? Because a lot of things are changing.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to would like to gratulate to Euronews and the World Tourism Institute to organizing this wonderful event. Is very timely, and also as just you mentioned, is past decade is world is changing. Now is of course bilaterally everyone is each other is creating is a strategic or other partnership and the friendship cooperation. But multilateral is, of course, in many criticized from UN for others. But where is organization in Turkic states? Where is our young organization? We are only 16 years old. We just established 2009 by Nakhchivan Agreement is in Azerbaijan. Is for our leaders come together. It was Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and the Turkey. Is later is 19 is join Uzbekistan. Now is our full 5 membership, and of course our observers, Hungary and Turkmenistan, and the other. So this is really is our countries for tourism, and for today's subject is also like tourism. Actually, this decade, tourism is strategic instrument, so soft power and the diplomacy capital. But in our countries together, is last year and the before last year, more than 100 million people is international is from foreigners coming, not each other, because we are, for example, in Central Asia, is very unique. Is also is traveling each other. Is more than 100 people. So only our Turkey, as you know, in the more than 60 million people each year is travels. So our organization is unique because we're based in really unique because we're based in history, culture, heritage, language, linguistically. So we was 1,100 years together. So I will be together in forever. So. Tourism is one is part of main part of in economy now, not only in our countries, as just before Mongolian Prime Minister mentioned, Her Excellency now is mentioned, or in our African friends mentioned. Everywhere is tourism becoming is important. Is not only they bring people together, as just you mentioned, is changing political, not only daily, hourly changing now. But tourism will be to really soft power, and really to people tie is our main priority in our organization. So let's see to move here.
And I want to ask you just to very quickly follow up to what you said, because in the previous panel, the Italian representative, she talked about locations in the world that don't need an introduction because they have such a legacy in popular culture. I think it's very obvious, and I want to be very respectful about this, but countries like Italy, Spain, France, they already have that public awareness. The countries that you represent, and again, to be very clear, you have a very long history and a very long legacy, but it is not obvious to a part of the world. And as you said, we're a young organization. There are some countries, potential visitors, who are only now coming to know you. How do you pitch that? What do you tell them?
But our geography is stretching from Anatolia to Central Asia, from Caspian to Altai. It's really big area, 4.5 million square kilometers. Our territorially, we are in top 5. So as you know, the one is our member only. Kazakhstan is number 9 for territorially. So as you know, in the Great Silk Road historically, but now is also this is not only now is more middle corridor is more knowledgeable is not only for economically. This is bring culture and everything knowledge together. So this way is a legacy also is working for us in the mention is our African friends colleague. Young generation is also is growing. We are now more than 175 million population is our population, but totally is Turkic people in the world is more than 300 people. So this is also not only we are in the kind of each other, we more for hospitality or this I think in our nation one is the first is who is one is indicator in our nations. If you someone guest coming, they providing them everything. We call hoş geldiniz. We say only first would say after say hello, we say welcome. So this is, also in the part of tradition, and this is also one is indicated.
Well, thank you for that. And also joining us is Meshhari Al-Nahari. He is the CEO of the Asir Investment Company. I don't want to say because it's a big responsibility representing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but yes, hailing from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Gulf now, there's a very attractive story around tourism. I think again, and I want to say this very politely, but if you had asked people maybe 10 to 15 years on the map, they would have been able maybe to point Dubai and little else on the front of tourism. Obviously, the oil story has been there for many years. When it comes to tourism, how do you see this evolving? And it seems there's been a big push from the kingdom, especially in the past 5 years, to really open up and tell a narrative to say there's many good destinations in the Gulf, and Saudi is equally as competitive as other neighbors. So what's the outlook, would you say?
Exactly. Actually, thank you very much. That's actually a very great question, because maybe let me pick on Dubai example. For example, 25 years ago, no one would have known Dubai. So the world is evolving, the Gulf is evolving. We're trying to build a story around tourism. Saudi Arabia, maybe it's well known for the Hajj and Umrah, which is basically the Islamic traditions. So people come and visit for Hajj and Umrah, but people can enjoy some sort of different type of tourism when they come to Saudi. So the birth of this company is called Asir Investment Company. Asir, by the way, is a region in Saudi Arabia. It's in the southern part of Saudi Arabia. Maybe if you see some pictures of Asir region, you would see something that you wouldn't imagine that you will see in Saudi Arabia. It's totally different. In the size, Asir is double in size of Switzerland. So that's to give you a narrative of how big we're talking about. In the topography, it has 4 different topographies. It has the mountains, it has the wadis, it has the coast, and it has the plateau. So all of that in the same region. It has a normal, beautiful weather across the year. So we're trying to build a year-round destination around this region. We are so focused and determined in building a tourism and hospitality-focused experience in this region in partnership with the private sector. We call ourselves private sector. However, we are owned by the Public Investment Fund, and we are created actually by the Public Investment Fund. Yet we are doing all of our projects in partnership with the private sector. So maybe compared to my previous panelist, maybe I represent the investment side of what we can do to build an experience around tourism. People no longer travel to try a specific asset or to taste a specific food. They travel for an experience. What can we provide to those people? How we can build those experiences? The experiences needs to be built based on a partnership spirit with partners, with locals, with the community, from the people to the people. So people travel to see each other, to get to know each other, and to experience each other's culture.
And just as a quick follow-up question, you say a lot of this is about the experience when you're on the ground. Saudi Arabia is in a big moment of transformation, of course, with the vision the Crown Prince put forward for 2030. It's really a moment of change in many different ways. What is the story then, the narrative that you want to sell to the world and also potential investors about this vision for Saudi when it comes to specifically this sector? What is the Saudi experience?
It's basically what investors like to usually look at. It's basically a first mover advantage. So basically, this is a new transformation that is happening in the region, a new transformation that is happening in the country, and a new transformation that is happening in this specific region. So basically, this is a new start. This is a new journey. Early joiner will be the biggest winners at the end of the day. It's still, I wouldn't call it a white space, but there are a lot to be done to build in that narrative. There are a lot that can be provided by a foreign investor whom can invest in this region. And by the way, let me give you just a hint about the region. This region is very rich when it comes to culture and heritage. So imagine a foreign investor comes bringing his or her own experience into that region that is already rich in culture and heritage. Imagine what would be the ultimate outcome would be. It would be a great outcome for every visitor to that region.
Well, Thank you for that, Prime Minister. I know you have a very busy agenda, and of course you have to continue your meetings. I'm looking at the watch, but I want to, of course, give you at this point, really a platform because. Sometimes we hear about Sri Lanka, but it comes from sort of the experience of someone who went there and it's their own take on the country. It's very difficult to define a country in just a few words and a few sentences. But, given that we're here in Davos, and the great thing about Davos is that you get to be in 30 different countries in a week because you get to have all of these meetings that normally you'd have to travel for, and now they're all concentrated here. So what is the image beyond the pitch? Because that's seems to me too reductionist. What is the narrative that you come here and you explain about your country, in particular with the sector?
Well, my fellow panelists talked about tourism as an experience now, and I think Sri Lanka really offers a unique experience because yes, we have culture, we have heritage, we have great food, we have history, we have wildlife, we have beaches, all packed into 650 1,000 square meters. So within a day, you can sort of experience all of these different aspects of Sri Lanka. But if you really ask me what it is that's really unique about Sri Lanka, I would say it's people. You ask anyone who's been to Sri Lanka, and it's the warmth of the people, the connections you make, the relationships you establish, and I think that's what's so important about tourism and tourism today. In this very unstable, chaotic context, where tourism can be that bridge, can build those human relationships and those people-to-people connections that bring a little bit of sense of sanity amidst all of this chaos. And I think Sri Lanka, the connections you make in Sri Lanka will really be meaningful in that sense.
So it's a society you would say that is still open to the world. And this seems a cliche, but it's not, because at this point in time, there are clear countries, and I don't want to name names because that's not the point, that are really retrenching, that I'm saying we go first.
Yeah.
Then the rest, it's an open conversation. So would you say maybe perhaps that is also what they can find, a society that is still open to making these connections?
Open to making those connections. I think the way we welcome people, the word that we use, Ayubowan itself, right? It's about may you live long, have a long life, right? And I think that sentiment is what we've been known throughout history for. And I think that's what makes Sri Lanka special and unique. And yes, at a time when others are retrenching or being very protectionist or being very exclusivist in who they welcome and who they don't, Sri Lanka is actually one of the countries in Asia where everyone is welcome. Even warring partners can meet in Sri Lanka.
And just, Prime Ministers, I know you have to go. Just a final question. Of course, it's Davos, so we have to talk about business too. For an investor, for foreign money, cash that is willing or would be happy to put it to work in your country, what can they expect in terms of authorities, in terms of a willingness to give permits, to work together, to give access to public tenders, to constructions, workforce? What can they expect?
Well, we are looking to build that infrastructure, the infrastructure that is welcoming towards investors, one that's transparent, accountable. But I must say that we're looking for investors who are interested in a long-term investment, in an investment that will ensure a resilient economy, a resilient tourism sector, one that's green, one that's climate friendly, and one that's also inclusive. Right? So that's the vision that we have for our tourism sector, one that will actually contribute to fixing some of the more structural problems in our country as well, right? And where our overall, and fits in with our overall economic and development vision for a more inclusive, climate-friendly country. And that's the kind of investment we look for even in the tourism sector.
Thank you very much. And now, obviously, as a final round, of course, I want to ask you both. Davos is a great place to make connections, but obviously for a lot of investors, what matter or what is important is the follow-up to the connections that get made in Davos. What is it that you can guarantee them that they would find representing your institution if they make an investment in those countries? Because they'll say, or they could argue, that was a very attractive pitch, but what am I going to find out if I say I'm deploying cash, if I want to build something this year, if I need workers? What kind of environment, real business environment, can they expect?
Yes, thank you. But your question is for environment, for investment is business environment very important. But in our countries, business environment is in very high level. So is first what they mean business environment is for stability, and of course for secure, and as just Your Excellency mentioned is peoples. So it's very important. So is economic growth is in our countries, just GDP is combined GDP 2.1 trillion US dollars, but last year in 2025 is GDP grows for 6.7%, but normally 3.5 is in globally. So in our countries, some our countries more than 10% is growing, and also for investment area is more providing for security for protect investment, and also visa facilities. Is all our countries is open for many countries without visa, so this is also is giving some environment for tourism, especially for if you were talking here in Davos, and of course is geography is also we have lakes, mountains, sea, everything. So is some our member state is 12 months is have tourism. So someone is for seasonally. So everything is as you just before to closing. I would like to just to pay attention. We have another one is project in our organization. Tabarruk Ziyarat is mentioned about is people is traveling for religions for importance for mosque chains and some cities is very historical, starting from Samarkand, Bukhara, or in Anatolia, in Izmir, or in Istanbul, or in Baku, or in Caspian. So if you go others for Almaty, or Turkestan, or in Osh, or Bishkek, so anywhere. So
Well, thank you.
this is also, and I think, is the environment, and also, of course, very important for logistics. So between for all capitals and the other famous cities is logistically is no problems.
Well, thank you for that. And just as a final question, of course, as we come to the end of this panel, you said at the start of your first question that, you know, a very obvious destination now, like let's say Dubai, 25 years ago, it wasn't that obvious. The Italian representative that we had before, she said the Italian government now is very committed to making sure that tourism is a strategic sector. It's not seen as a really not premium sector. It is for the country. In the two cases, and we can cite many more, I'm Spanish, Spain had a very similar approach. There was a very clear vision from the state that they were going to bet a lot on this, that they were going to build, that they wanted to make this such a key pillar of the economy. I wonder when it comes to Saudi, of course, for a lot of the investment story here, if you get into tourism, this is not about one season. You build to stay in there and build it up and stay many seasons. What can you offer them? Is there a story of a commitment from a state that is now willing to say, we also want to be a big player in the future? This is not a short-term play?
Maybe I can't talk on behalf of the state, but I can. But I can talk about the evidence of what I represent. Maybe the birth of my company, the company that I'm presenting today, is just an evidence of that commitment. So this company was established to invest in that sector. And there is a statement that I always like to repeat myself with it. Investors are smart. You really don't need to educate them. You just need to make them aware about the opportunities that exist. They just need to be aware that this region exists, this country exists, this vision exists, and they will make themselves educated. So our job is to make them aware and to have that such of a presence and to make sure that we are doing this outreach to the investors. Other than that, they will just be smart enough and good enough to be aware, to know about the opportunities that exist in that region. Because the birth of this company and the birth of this company was a result of that vision. So we are here to execute. We are looking for partners. We are investing in that region heavily. We are investing across the region heavily. So any investors who thinks this is the right opportunity, it's our job first to make them aware, and then to co-invest with them in these opportunities.
And if someone walks out of here and says, I want to invest in this region, what would you tell him or her? Would you say,
I'm ready.
tomorrow, Monday, we can do X, Y, and Z? What does that look like?
I have my business cards already.
Well, thank you very much
Thank
to
you
the
so
three
much.
of you. Thank you, of course, Prime Minister. I know you're very
Thank
busy,
you.
so I appreciate for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very
Highly
much.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll be starting very soon. Hey, it's lunchtime, you see. Thank you very much. If we can start, yes. The cameras are good. Very good. So we'll be starting very shortly. Okay, very good. Okay. So, well, thank you. And we're going to continue and start our final session very soon, which is now in session. And of course, to everyone watching on YouTube. And as you know, I repeat, obviously now Euronews also has its own travel channel, which is always interesting when we look at this industry. So as people begin to coming back into this final session, I am very happy to have the vice, yes? Very good. So the Vice President of the Republic of Suriname, of course. Thank you very much for being with us. I would like to start the panel. Before we get into the specifics, sir, of sustainability and what sustainable and green tourism means and whether it's still relevant, just to get a sense, a snapshot of your country. And we've done this throughout the day with many prime ministers and authorities that have joined us, which is to say, in this very competitive market that is tourism, in which everyone obviously tries to make the best case for your country, what is the the case or the pitch that you make to anyone who wants to visit? What can they expect?
Well, Suriname at the moment is probably a country that is not very known to a lot of the world population, but I must say that Suriname is going through some exciting times. Recently, we have had the development or the discovery of large quantities of oil offshore, and we are preparing to start producing oil in 2028 by companies like Total and those multinationals. So Suriname, a small country with about 600,000 people in the north of South America. It's also known as Dutch Guyana.
Yes.
Well, the Guyanas are, British Guyana has discovered a lot of oil. Now Suriname is the next one. We are the Dutch part. And Suriname is unique in the sense that if you look at the population, what it's all about, we have 600,000 people, but it's a mixture of everything you can think about, all over the world. And the nice thing about Suriname is that we have been able, over the last 100 years, that we are living very nicely together. Suriname, as far as the different populations is concerned, but also the religions, live nicely together. And it's the only place, I think, on earth where you will find a synagogue next to a mosque sitting together and the people looking after each other. Suriname also, and one thing that struck me, I studied in the United States of America, and one day I discovered on TV they were talking about the interior of Suriname, where you have the Maroons living in Suriname, and it looked like it's the only place where you still find culture as we had known that for hundreds of years in Africa, that you even don't find in Africa anymore these days. Anyway, due to the background of how the population got together, you will find that Suriname has all kinds of cultures all over the world put together. We also have, I think, very interesting for as far as tourism is concerned. People must recognize that Suriname is one of the 3 only countries in the world that are carbon negative.
Yes.
So we have a tropical rainforest. Still, 93% of our area is tropical rainforest, where we can find ecotourism. Ecotourism is very important for us because that indeed, if you look at the development of tourism, we don't want to get in a situation where we jeopardize that position that we hold at the moment. So we are focusing on, let's say, tourism, where we don't get too many people, but high-level, high-end tourism, whereby people would come to Suriname, but not in large quantities, but the people that come are looking for quality in terms of nature, rest, and all those kind of qualities that some people look for. So Suriname is very unique in that sense, and I think that we have a lot of opportunities to do business in that sense, and we are open to do business, of course, with everybody that wants to do business with Suriname.
So, Vice President Rosana, you're saying, if you come to our country, you're going to find, if I understand correctly, just to summarize, a society that is still open, that is multicultural, faith, but also there is, and it connects me to the point of this panel, where the idea of sustainable tourism, and obviously later on we'll talk about whether this is still relevant, whether it's still seen as a premium product and the kind of clientele that is interesting. But in your case, you believe that this is something that sets you apart. You found a niche market.
Yes, I think so. And I also can mention that Suriname is also on the natural heritage list.
Yes.
So that's very important also. We still have our city, that is in a certain quality as far as how the history developed. And Suriname, you can still find a lot of significant features that realize us or that brings us back to the historical times that were before during the colonization period.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, we continue in our panel. Please allow me to introduce Randy Durband. He is the CEO of the Global Sustainable Tourism Alliance. Christopher Kisling, he is the president of the Loro Parque Foundation. I've got to say, I've been to them many times in the past. Not now, but when I was a kid. It's more suitable, perhaps. And Nicole Mondra, she is senior director at APCO. A question perhaps for the three of you. I know time is of the essence. For you have many meetings, so I want to get straight to the point. This panel is about sustainable tourism and the idea that still this component of green is not just a niche, but it's also a competitive advantage. It appeals to a very specific type of clientele. Of course, I'm sure it does not escape to you, however, that the global conversation around sustainability has really changed, and some argue it's not really at the forefront anymore. So what is the impact in your different perspectives, and is that still the case? Is it still relevant, or actually it's hard to pitch it now as a premium element in a package? We can start with you, sir.
Thank you. I believe it's our responsibility. It's not, in the past people talked about an objective was sustainability, but at the end of the day, if we as a provider, we are not sustainable, we will not leave the responsibility to our clients. So we showed with 3.5 million visitors at our parks that we can be sustainable. And it's not an impact to the entrance price or to the service. It's simply which is a philosophy which you can fulfill when you follow up with it. And our guests, they appreciate which is carbon footprint, which is 11 grams per person. That means the day which they can pass in our park might be one of the most sustainable days. But at the same time, as a zoo, Loro Park is a zoo, we are an educational center, so we're inspiring lots of young children. So when they come to the park and when they meet the animals, live animals, in a controlled environment, not impacting, which is the natural habitats, then they get this inspiration which in the future will cause a more sustainable world, which we need nowadays. We are in the 6th mass extinction. We are facing 8.3 billion people on the planet, and tourism is a wonderful thing, but it also allows people to get into the last corner of the world. That means we should try to concentrate tourism somehow and turn it into sustainable tourism. That means it's not bad to have mass tourism. It's actually good. Always then when you can make it sustainable. Create vertical gardens, make vertical farming. And maybe like this we can achieve with renewable energies, without plastic, and with other sustainable aspects, we can create, which is a wonderful, sustainable world in tourism.
And Mr. Kinsling, and just to really reiterate, I've been to your parks. I have a picture with one of the parrots back in the day. It's probably done 25 years ago. But I have to, at the time, this was not something I believe that, well, I didn't because I was namely 6, so obviously it's not things that you think about. But back in the day, the idea that, yes, we're going to an animal zoo. I'm not even sure the word zoo is something that still, let's just say an animal park. It was not something that really featured or in conversations whether that sustainable aspect was in it. Not even the care of the animals at the time was really at the forefront. What I'm understanding based on what you say is that you now firmly believe for your clients, they actually care about that. It's something they consider.
Absolutely, yes. They're discussions in social networks, and they're influenced by emotional arguments, but not scientific. We work scientifically, and the people which work with us, they do it through love. They'll do it for the passion. So when we talk about conservation at the zoo, which is a conservation center, we have to think about that these animals which we take care for, they have their habitat. So we know about the problems, we know how to handle them, and all the knowledge will be transferred into the habitat as well. So we, with the Laurel Park Foundation, we have over 300 projects. We saved 18 species from extinction, and taking in consideration that we lose every hour 6 species, they get extinct. We stopped the world for 3 hours, and I believe that's a great achievement for an animal park, for a conservation center, and for the Laurel Park Foundation. And what we do, it's what we try to educate the smallest, we try to sensibilize the adults, we try to get into the country of origin of these animals, of these species, and all over where they're humans, we have problems with the conflict, human and nature. And what we try to do is we try to conserve nature, primary forests, and the species living in there, so that for the future, people can still have that wonderful cultural, natural value of biodiversity. This is something what we can do together. So visiting a zoo is sharing, which is the effort and the mission for the conservation of nature.
Well, sir, thank you very much for that. And on that note, perhaps for you, Mr. Durbin, a follow-up question that connects the 2 points. Is the sustainable conversation still relevant when it comes to the specific sector of tourism and gathering convenient people? And then 2, and then this connects me to the idea of the clientele and what they want. Usually, you have to be prepared at least to pay a premium or to really have an educational background to really understand what a sustainable product or a sustainable way of handling tourism means. Is that something that you still believe in 2026 when you have to make a booking, buy a ticket, is still relevant in the mindset of a customer?
I think it's more relevant today than ever, and I would push back on whether it was ever niche or going away. I mean, there is a rightward shift in the U.S. and Europe, and there's so the voices against, but there's so many currents pushing towards sustainability that are unstoppable. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about sustainable tourism. One of the points I would make that it's not niche. If you look at the market research today, global travelers, Trip.com and Booking.com have done the best market research globally. And across all economies, north, south, east, west, developing, travelers increasingly want sustainability by very profound numbers across all economic lines. If there ever was niche, maybe like the US market going to Costa Rica eco lodges. I would argue that was more about being cool than about eco. But all generations, young generations are very angry at the world they're inheriting. And we're seeing now in satisfaction data on travel and tourism that the traveler wants it. We're very close to the World Sustainable Hospitality Alliance in London, and they were just speaking recently with major investors in hospitality from London and New York stock exchanges, and they said, you guys are missing out on some capital. You're not sustainable enough, and you're reporting so poorly. There'd be more investment. So I push back on 2 levels. The capital markets want sustainability, and I would argue the travelers want it. I think there's so many misconceptions. CEOs usually run out of the room when we start talking about sustainability, and everybody assumes they know something. But I've been in travel and tourism for more than 40 years, operating in all 7 continents, and that's something I've always seen in travel and tourism. People don't get it. It's extremely complex. Our only solutions to sustainability is to take it subsector by subsector. You need a hospitality solution, you need a land transport solution, you need an attraction solution, you need a MICE solution. It's bloody complex. And it's really, really hard. And I think that we're just so unsystematic. Where we're seeing progress and success factors in our work globally, we work in more than 100 countries with big brands and major governments, is that when you really do have a systematic approach, it can really work. Let me give you Turkey for an example. We help operate a national program on hospitality with them that started in 2022. By 2030, they want all 20,000 of their hotels certified to our program. Why? They haven't said why exactly. I think it's because their core market of Europeans really want sustainability, so they're giving it to them in a big way. Most of the world is really, has I think, a misconception about standards and reporting. We have 300 some eco labels on hotels, but they don't verify very well, so they don't have individual credibility. So where we do have a credible program like we've built in Turkey, we probably have the most rigorous, credible certification for a hotel in the world in Turkey at a very low price because the demand is there because they mandate it. Now, I'm not arguing government should mandate, but governments can be very creative of working with trade associations to create incentives like we work with in Singapore. They're creating incentives, awareness, and so forth. And so there's some governments around the world very active working with industry to push things along. And the customers love it. And the customers are far more willing to change and say, oh, I don't need a plastic water bottle in my room. I will walk down the hall with a pitcher near the ice machine and get some fresh water. They're willingly doing that at the high end, at low end, at every end. So there's a lot of misconceptions. And one misconception is that sustainability has to cost money. You can save big money. Hilton just did a total redo in all their Middle Eastern hotels where they had a 61% reduction in food waste, which has a direct correlation to food cost, because there's so much food wasted at buffets and so forth. There's a lot of things that sustainability can save you money, and that's not even known. So there's better revenue to be had, I would argue, because the market research showing travelers want it, and there's great cost savings to be had because you don't have to just change the energy structure in a building for carbon emissions reduction. There's lots of other things we can do. So, I mean, I could go on and on, obviously. I'm trying to
I'm happy you pushed back against the premise of the idea that, sustainability is falling out of fashion, or also this idea that there's misconceptions. Because sometimes I find, and the Italian representative talked about this at the start of the panel, she said sometimes we look at very reductionist numbers. So if it's a tourist attraction, perhaps a measure of success is just how many arrivals it was able to bring in. And that's a very short-sighted story of what the product itself is telling you. And I'm cynical, you're not, and so I'm going to ask you the same question. So I wonder, in the idea of misconceptions and how something that is successful is measured, is it perhaps wrong the way that sustainability is measured? Is there perhaps an issue in the way that we use the metrics or the data that's used?
I think, everyone has made some excellent points here, and it's a really interesting conversation to be had, because I think one of the misconceptions around sustainable tourism is also that people think it means to not travel, to not see the world, and that's not what it means at all. But there's a way to do it that positively gives back to the place that you're seeing, and that requires really strong public and private partnership working together, sort of hand in hand. I think that there are challenges with how the data is currently being used and applied, and actually a point that you just made that was really strong that I think we should build on is that you linked it to economic resilience, you linked it to growth in economy, and I think that's where you start to see people really understand, okay, this is how we can apply these sort of regulations and policies and what they mean to our actual benefit, so that we see economic growth as well as growth in tourism, as well as growth in understanding of other industries where a certain country wants to be seen. So I think there's a number of misconceptions out there, and it can be a challenge to link those things, but also, as it currently stands in this environment, an opportunity too, because we are seeing a shift in the way people look at this topically, and that creates opportunity both from a business perspective and a country perspective.
So Nicole, I'm very happy you mentioned the idea that one of the big misconceptions, because we have to talk about this in a way, is the idea that if you're sustainable, it means you travel less, or you don't get on a plane, or you don't buy multiple attractions, you do less and less and less. And then, of course, it also becomes very political, and then it becomes even more polarizing. Yes. So then you have the full combination there. Yeah. So how can that be changed? Is there a way, and perhaps also Vice President, it's a question for you, the idea of sustainability, is there a way, A, to make it less political to that extent? And is there a way that you can also create a more positive narrative on that note too, because some look at sustainability as something that's really a pain. You know, it's you travel. Oh, I'm such a horrible human being. I got on a plane.
I think it's linking it to these other kind of these other benefits. I truly do think linking it to the economic benefit is important. I think, and I also think there's a piece of it around making people part of the solution as well, and not just creating a narrative where they're a problem. So you see different hotels and resorts doing, restoration initiatives. I think we see that in the Maldives a lot, right? Those hotels that do you can grow the coral reefs and you help kind of create that. I think making that a part of, or making people part of the solution and not just the problem, is also a way to sort of shift and change that narrative and how they talk about it. But that's just one way. There's many.
And that's such a crucial point. I know you're busy and you have to go, and we're starting a little bit late, but I do want to do a final round of questions and perhaps to the point now. Since this is also a business conference, we've talked about the challenges, but also now let's end with the opportunities and the positive case that you can find. When it comes specifically to your country, and this is a way of connecting with investors, what is it that you would like to see? What can you offer? And again, in the matter of sustainability, do you believe this is actually giving you a competitive advantage to that extent, the fact that you already have a sort of well-implanted infrastructure?
I think that I have to repeat the fact that Suriname is in exciting times at the moment. We are developing our oil reserves, but one thing that we do not want is to be dependent upon oil. So we have to look for alternatives. And one of the major alternatives that we're looking for at the moment is indeed in the tourism area. And we think that in developing the tourism sector, we have to work closely, of course, as government with the private sector, but also not to forget the tourism that we're talking about, ecotourism, to involve the population that lives there. Because they live in the interior, and as I mentioned, 93% still tropical rainforest. We have to try to maintain that as much as possible. And these people are fully dependent upon what is available in the tropical rainforest as far as medicines and food and all those kind of things, recreation. And that has to blend into the tourism that you're going to develop. So I think that if you involve all these different groups that have their own, how do you say it, in Dutch we say belang, but advantages.
That's just not very good.
Advantages. I think it will be a win-win situation, and that will create the basis for sustainability as far as we are concerned.
And in specific terms, just because to get into business, what would that mean? Is it a type of licensing that they can find? Is this facilitations from the government? Is there programs that you already have? In specific terms, what can an investor find?
I think that as far as we as a government are concerned, we are willing to provide all the assistance and the facilitation to the private sector to develop these activities that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. And now for the three of you, I think we've started with the pushback, the idea that maybe sustainability is not as relevant or as hot as it was before, some of the issues around it. But again, let's end it on a positive note and say, when you look at 2026 and the three of you conducting what you've said is that you do believe there is an appetite, and perhaps the story is too negative compared to what you see and the feedback also that you get from your different institutions. So what is still the positive case when it comes to sustainability, but also what is the business case still behind it? Because ultimately we have to connect and make a business pitch and say, you can still find good opportunities and make money on this. So what would it be as we enter and kick off 2026?
I believe that we can use tourism perfectly to generate sustainable projects or conservation projects. For example, we are promoting the project of the Micronesian marine sanctuary that goes from the Azores, Madeira, Canary Islands down to Cape Verde. If we receive out of tourism, which is a certain help, certain amount, we can facilitate this investment to make it real. The IUCN declared their interest by 97% of their members So it's really a project which we here and everybody could help to make it happen. We could create this marine sanctuary thanks to tourism as well. So I believe if we work together, we are able to create a better world.
Thank you for that. Well, a similar question, of course. You defended actually very passionately. I mean, you pushed very hard on my premise, so I like that in a way. For 2026, what is, and I think on this we can agree, is that the context has changed and the forces around this conversation have changed. But the numbers sometimes don't lie. So what are you seeing that makes you still say, this is still a big opportunity? I disagree. And how do you implement that in going into this new year that's about to start?
Yeah, I have to enter into geography, I think. I'm American, and I spent more of my life in the private sector sending Americans to Europe, and those are things I know very well. But I sent Americans to the whole world, actually. But I'm living in Korea now. I've been very Asia-focused for a long time. We're working intensively in Singapore, in Japan, and China, and others. They're way ahead of the Western world on sustainability. Way ahead. So I think maybe at Euronews, you're kind of like thinking some old tapes are rolling. I mean, what's going on there at every level? And the government is pushing. In some way, they just say, this is important. In our master plan for our green country, tourism is a big part of it. You guys have to do something. So the minister goes and does something in ways that we're not seeing in the Western world. So that gives me great hope. And I think we're going to have a reverse. I think now the Eastern world will show the Western world some ways.
So we're the ones living in the past.
I would say so.
And same question, of course.
Sure. I think, to build on what everyone has said, I think that the opportunity is in collaboration here. No one country, no one business can do this on their own. It really does take a lot of different people to come to the table and make these sort of commitments and initiatives. But there's opportunity in that, and new innovation comes from that. Opening new doors comes from that. And so I think that's something to be really excited about.
And just as a final point on this, which also connects to the idea that maybe we're in the past, would you say this political cycle is very short-sighted, and actually the bigger picture will point, if you look at the 20, 30-year play, stick on this lane because you'll be proven right?
I think that this is something that sustainability and sustainable tourism is not something that's going away. I think the way that it's talked about will change. There will be shifts in that narrative, but the premise behind it will stay. Yes.
It's a long-term play. Well, thank you very much for joining us and for joining us on this conference. We now have reached the end of the forum. We hope you had a great time. And of course, at Euronews, we're very happy to host you all, and we hope to see you again next year. Maybe I'll visit. I will visit, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.